Good evening, I'm Steve. This is my rock and metal life, and I'm here to talk about something that is not exactly like going to a concert, but it's about as close as you can get without actually doing one. This past week, or this past weekend, I went and saw the Led Zeppelin movie, and I saw it in IMAX, and I heard it in all its crazy loud glory, and I really, really enjoyed the whole experience. Uh, Led Zeppelin, of course, holds a pretty high position on the totem pole in rock for not just me, but for just about everybody that's into the hard and heavy stuff. And I just wanted to talk about it and maybe not like a full on review, but more give my opinion. I've seen some reviews and I've seen like little nitpicky things that people didn't like, and I will definitely talk about one of those for sure. But overall, man, it Led Zeppelin's one of those bands that you don't get a whole heck of a lot of this from them, and I'm going to talk a little bit about. I guess I'll summarize the movie, but first of all, for me, I got into music and the good stuff in like 78, 79, and of course, John Bonham died right after In Through the Outdoor came out, and uh, when I got in there, as I've said a bunch of times, Van Halen, Foreigner, Boston, bands like that were kind of my bands. The Cars, the ones that came along like they were just getting on the radio and they had just been established, fairly new. Um, the Kansas and Styx and uh, Led Zeppelin especially, and definitely the Rolling Stones. These were all kind of legacy bands to me, and I don't say that in a bad way. I revered them. I recognize them as these are the bands that kind of built this. They were uh, they have their part of it, and they did their thing, and because of that we have this. We've evolved from Elvis to the Beatles to Jimi Hendrix to Led Zeppelin to the Rolling Stones to what we got in my era, late 70s, fresh crop of new bands that came along and really revitalized the industry. And Led Zeppelin, obviously, they had the songs, they had the catalog. When Bonham died, uh, I actually, before too long, like midway through the 80s or toward the end of the 80s, I got so tired of Led Zeppelin, and it was two things. One was the radio airplay. It was over the top, and looking back, as it should be, right? But then the other thing was there just always seemed to be, like in magazine articles and even just the people I talked to, this aura like, oh, the mysterious Led Zeppelin. They're not humans like we know the Motley Crue guys are tearing up all the bars on the strip and stuff like that. And Led Zeppelin, obviously, I think they set a standard for the debauchery and all that stuff, in a generation prior. But there was just all this mystique surrounding him, and Jimmy Page with the Aleister Crowley house and all that. Um, I don't know. Part of it, of course, is that they're British. Part of it is, Peter Grant set them up to be, bigger than life. And I'll tell you this: the songs, the music, it delivered. It delivered every step of the way. And I don't think I ever, I certainly never had any point in time where I felt like they were overrated or they weren't all that great. I just got tired of them, and I people are probably laughing at that. How do you get tired of Led Zeppelin? And again, it's not just the airplay; it's the same old songs over and over. Rock and roll, here we go. Black Dog, here we go. And then Stairway to Heaven, obviously takes up most of 10 minutes. Um, and FM radio just plays this stuff over and over again. And I don't know. There was so much other music going on. So I did actually get to a point where I was like, man, I just don't even want to hear those guys anymore. And it just sounds as insane to me saying it right now as it sounds to anybody listening to this. However, I bounced back, and I bounced back in a big way. Like maybe I don't know, 15 years ago at least. And I bought up all the CDs of, I had my Led Zeppelin stuff. I had a bunch of the records. Um, I had Houses of the Holy, Stairway to Heaven, Song Remains the Same. And then In Through the Outdoor I had on cassette, and I got Led Zeppelin 2 and 3, and I might have got Led Zeppelin 4 on cassette, and I had that on record also. And some of these records are dating back to the Columbia Record Club, where I snatched a big old stash of them all in one get. But anyway, so that's my thing on Led Zeppelin. And I have steadily, the last 15, 20 years, I've really enjoyed them. And Physical Graffiti has become one of my top 5 of anybody. Aerosmith's Rocks, Van Halen's first one in 1984. It's in with those. Ozzy's Diary of a Madman. Those are, I could go on. There's my top 5 probably has like 15 records in it, but anyway, way up at the top, absolute favorites. Love Physical Graffiti, just everything on there, everything on that record. So I think Physical Graffiti more than anything has been my go-to over this last 15, 20 years. So that's it. That's my history. All that having been said, here we are at the movie, and the movie gives you something that you don't really get a whole lot from these guys. You got John Paul Jones, you got Page and Plant, and I believe they're all being interviewed in the same room, but I might be wrong on this, and I'd love for someone to tell me for sure. I think it was at separate times. I don't believe they were all in the same room at the same time, or maybe at the very end they might have been. But and very significant is there's an interview with John Bonham, and as I'm sure everybody knows, Bonham didn't do many interviews. He didn't like doing them. And so it's a pretty good interview, and they're playing it, and it says, it's being heard for the first time. And you're given the impression, I think it might be true, that Page, Plant, and Jones are hearing it for the first time. And it's a good interview that covers a lot of stuff, and you get to see the band members react to that. You also get to hear each band member tell their story, and they've got lots of pictures, black and white pictures of these guys growing up with their parents, first instruments, stuff like that, and making their way, and everybody's familiar with the Jimmy Page, with the nice haircut when he's like 13 years old. He's doing the Skiffle song on TV. You see his transformation from that into the 60s, long hair, more, I don't know what you want to call it, avant-garde dress, that kind of thing. So anyway, you get to hear these guys tell the story, and a big takeaway for me, and I've seen interviews with these guys before and all that, but they really captured the personal side of them, and they all came across really likable, especially John Paul Jones. He like really stuck out to me. Funny guy, really good way of looking at things, and when he tells the story, I love how all these guys coalesced and got to where they eventually came together as a band. John Paul Jones's mom and dad were basically a vaudeville act, and they show a picture of the dad, with the suit and the hat, playing the piano, and the mom is, a dancing girl, singing girl, on stage with him. And before John Paul Jones had anything going, his dad told him, I can get you a job as a working musician somewhere. And John Paul Jones said, no, I'm going to find a band. And how'd that go? Pretty good. Good call. Good thing he didn't bog himself down and, traveling musician for, not much money probably. He's probably a guy that was going to make it out of there, but still, fortuitous, I think. And then the other two guys, we know Page's story pretty well. I would think anybody watching this is pretty familiar, and how he got himself up to the Yardbirds, and then the Yardbirds went the way that they went and kind of ended up becoming Zeppelin. Plant, okay, one thing about Plant that I kind of I don't think I really appreciated, when Zeppelin ended and Plant went solo with Pictures at 11, I always felt like he projected this image of, kind of regal, kind of, um, for all the history of the down and dirty 70s hard rock, blues rock band, and the debauchery that we all know about, and, everything you read in Hammer of the Gods and stuff like that. Plant post Zeppelin to me, and I don't think, like, I wouldn't say intentionally, and I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with it even. I think he kind of like matured into like a mature, uh, kind of like Mick Jagger went from being the bad boy to the, the CEO of rock, or whatever you call it, the regal guy with, he's been here a long time. He has all the respect. He's had all the success. And, he dressed maybe more like Robert Palmer than, he does in The Song Remains the Same, with the all that stuff, the Nebworth concert at the end with the shirt down, unbuttoned down to his belly button. Yeah, he projected more of I think regal's the word I keep coming back to, something like that. Well, they showed what was going on with him as a youth, and it was pretty radical. They got multiple pictures of him in this legalized pot campaign, and he looks like, I think a lot of people wouldn't recognize that to be Robert Plant. Um, and that's great. His past is his past. And a funny part about that is he said that Bonham, he knew Bonham from way back, and Bonham's wife told Bonham, stay away from that guy. He's going nowhere. That Plant guy he's going to lead you to ruin and all that. And it was kind of funny. Like when I first heard him telling the story, I was laughing, and I go, how could she think that? And then they show you these pictures of him, and he's in the newspaper, leading the thing about we need to legalize pot, and and he got arrested and all this stuff. And I've been so familiar with the post Zeppelin image, Now and Zen and Manic Nirvana, all that stuff. Every time you see him, and to me, it's correct. He grew and matured, and he became this, and we all went crazy when we were young, and those guys with all the success, they had the license to be as crazier than any of us can dream of. So anyway, when you get older, you probably shouldn't be doing that stuff. You shouldn't be putting yourself in danger. You shouldn't be getting arrested and damaging your body and so on and so forth. So, good for him. But it was just for me personally. I don't know that everyone else would take that away from it, but that was like an eye opener to me. Like, whoa, look how he was, and he's always talked like so with such authority and maturity and everything. And you forget that, yeah, he was in on the, throwing the TVs out of the motel room and all that stuff, and all the girls and everything. So there was all that. And then I'm telling you, this stuff is, 50 plus, almost 60 years old. The footage, I was impressed with the footage that they had. Now, one of the criticisms, and probably the only one that I'm going to address, there are stretches where they're showing the band playing live, but the song that you're hearing is something else, and it's quite obvious. There are stretches of that. The vocal's coming out, and Plant, it doesn't have the microphone up, so on and so forth. It's very obvious. And I remember thinking, that's kind of too bad. But I'm telling you, we got a lot. We got a lot of that era footage, okay? Because what you get out of this movie is you get this and the whole tour for this, and along the way, the recording this. And I don't know how I missed that. I didn't know that Led Zeppelin 2 was recorded at various cities on the tour for Led Zeppelin 1. So by the time they end the tour, they end it with a whole lot more songs than what they started, because they've been writing and recording along the way, which is great. But man, we get to see. I would say the first, like, you've got live stuff, and then you've got songs that are played, and you see them live, but then you also see other footage. And Good Times, Bad Times, they obviously this is late '60s, and while they're playing Good Times, Bad Times, they're showing footage of various things going on in the world, which aren't great. Not just Vietnam, but all kinds of stuff going on everywhere. And boy, you get the whole song, and that's great, and it just sounds fantastic. And I was surprised how loud it was, like how it felt so loud to me, because I'm at the point when I go to concerts now, like I don't really need earplugs because it's not that loud to me anymore. And I'm my hearing's gonna go. I know it is. I don't know when, and that's why I do put in earplugs. A lot of the times, but that's the concerts. This was in the theater, and I mean, there were points where I was like, ooh, that's it almost felt like it was too loud, but I don't think there's any such thing. So I dug it. You got to see him do a little bit of "Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You." "Dazed and Confused," got to see a lot of that. "Your Time Is Gonna Come," they did. I don't remember if that was live or not. "Communication Breakdown," ooh yeah. And that's another thing. They played a couple of they showed footage of a couple of like smaller places. One of them was like right after they got the record done. I think they went to I want to say Denmark, and they showed them playing this, kind of like an American Bandstand kind of setting, but really small. And you got kids sitting on the floor, and the band's there, and that was another takeaway for me. Led Zeppelin, like day one from the word go, was in all its glory. I mean, they let it rip, and they had the goods. Everything you hear on these things, live is better, from what I saw. And you've got these kids, just sitting there, and Plant's just letting it fly, and Page is just an absolute wizard. And then there was another one. I want to say it was the one that they played at a venue called the Roundhouse, and it also was really small, and you had the audience was like tiered, so you had a row, and then you had a row, and they seemed to be right there. And man, when they start the song, it's like bam, 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 and the audience is. I mean, it looks on the screen. It looks like this might be too much for the audience, and I think there's like a band, like the Tonight Show band or whatever, is over off to the side, and they're just sitting there. And then over here you got an audience. It's like they're on the Jimmy Fallon show or something like that. And I might be mixing two different things up, but this particular one where they've got that band is sitting there and the audience is right here. I mean, Plant is just letting it out. And they show like little kids sitting there holding their ears, and there's a lady like holding a baby, and there's a look of what in the world is this? And they did not hold back. I mean, it was really something to see. I dug that. They had so much energy. They were out to take care of business. They were going to be successful. Nobody was going to stop them, and I felt like that just came through so clear. I really enjoyed that. And then the story. I'm not really going to go into like the details of what all it covers, but it's the first tour, and it's really great to see where they started and then where it ended, and to see the surviving band members, to see them react to the Bonham interview, that's really something too. And this is totally a me thing. My guitar heroes, there's many of them. Obviously, Edward Van Halen is the standard for me, like going forward. And my guys that I really, really love, George Lynch, Jake E. Lee, people like that, they're from an era not exactly like the Led Zeppelin era, like the Yardbirds and the Clapton and Beck and all that. And I do believe that I I got to a point with Page where I kind of lumped him in with those blues rock guys, and that was that. But the innovation of EVH and everything that came after it, I I, I stopped in my mind giving Page the due that he richly deserves. And when you see this movie and you see what he's doing, I mean that's one guy up there making this majestic sound, and he was young, all that energy. He was so good. Uh, Again, I'm sitting here acting like uh, I didn't know Page was that good. Well, I did, but I just kind of uh, Richie Blackmore is a guy from back then that I just absolutely love, and at the same time I kind of forget about him. And when I throw him on, wow, uh, his Deep Purple stuff the first time around, man, that guy was really blazing trails. And uh, so Page came across really good. Uh, I feel like these guys were destined to come together, and you'll catch that as you watch the movie. Man, a lot of fun. 2 hours and 1 minute was the running time. So I went to, I think it was the 7:15 showing. So obviously it doesn't start at 7:15. Started like 7:35, and then 9:35 we were out of there. And for me, it was just perfect. I wouldn't have complained if it was 3 hours, but 2 hours, right about exactly. That was good. That was really good. Um, the part of the mystique is they only got back together, I think, 3 times. I think Live Aid, and then the uh, the 40th anniversary of Atlantic Records in '88, and then that the concert for the Ahmet Erdogan, and that was in 2007. I think that was the last time the three of them got back together. The whole thing about having Jason Bonham on drums and doing a full-on tour, um, that never materialized. And then you had the Plant and Page got back together, and they put out 2 records, one in '94 and one in '98, I do believe, if I'm reading this correctly. So, um, over 40 plus years, that's not much Led Zeppelin, considering they're all walking around. They're still here, these three, and you'd like to see more of them. Plant, his solo stuff, I've gone a little farther into it than I did before. For my money, Pictures at 11's good. Principle of Moments is great. And then after that, Now and Zen, Manic Nirvana, um, not what I'm looking for, but not terrible. And it sure is good to hear his voice. And that stuff is interesting. And the more he goes into the non-traditional music sounds, it's interesting. And that's good. Page, I liked The Firm. I really liked that. But then I honestly don't know a whole lot about his, Death Wish and Godzilla, that kind of stuff. Um, so we haven't gotten much from these guys, really. I mean, Plant, I guess, is the one that's been the busiest, but he's definitely gone uh, away from the classic Zeppelin stuff. And as I said, good for him. That's not something that he shouldn't do. That's perfectly fine. If you don't want to listen to it, then don't buy the records. Don't go see him. He's doing just fine without us. So I think that's it. I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I purposely didn't take any notes. I just wanted to just give my takeaways before too many days went by. I think it's fantastic. The people that are posting online saying, pure garbage, don't bother. Oh, I think that's a mistake. I think if you listen to that, that's somebody that's either not on board with what Led Zeppelin is, because to me Led Zeppelin is very important. All right, and however important music can be, they occupy a really solid place. I love them. I just absolutely love them, and the guys are obviously aged, but they didn't come across as like forgetful and halting. They came across sharp as nails, and good memories and all that stuff. It was really fantastic. I'm like I said, I don't debate anybody over music. You like what you like. I'm just putting my 2 cents. I think you should go see it if you love the band. If you miss them, and to tell you the truth, I never that early stuff. Uh, I never really saw a lot of these clips. I never uh, got to see them in that form. And Song remains the same. I had that, like, I had the soundtrack in high school, and then I went and saw it at the Midnight Movie, and I own a copy of it now. Uh, Plant is not exactly vocally, he's down the road a little bit from what you're seeing in this movie, and also no keyboard. There isn't any no chord, or nothing past Zeppelin 2. And it's a 4-piece band, guitar, drums, bass, and Plant. And I'm telling you, they had it. They had the power. They packed the punch, and this is really good proof right here. I would urge everybody to see it, and anybody that's got any comments, I'd love to hear them.